Hello, and welcome to another catch-up recent reads. And in this video, I'll be talking about 3 books, and all 3 books are wonderful books. Okay. So let's start with this one. This is The Life of Hunger by Amélie Nothomb. I love this lady's writing so much. This is only the 3rd book of hers that I've read, and she has tons more because apparently she writes every year and publishes every year. This book was originally in French and it was translated into English by Shaun Whiteside. And it was published sometime in... The French version was published in 2004, and this English translated edition was in 2006. The Life of Hunger is an autobiographical novel, and the main character in this book is named Amélie. It's kind of similar to Fear and Trembling, also by her, in which the main character is also named Amélie, because that book is also kind of semi-autobiographical, although that book was a little bit out there, you know. But this one, it takes on a slightly different vibe. The Life of Hunger starts with the main character as a little girl living in Japan. And as we follow her story, we also follow how she and her family would move around to different countries as she's growing up, because the protagonist's father is a diplomat, and therefore their family would move to different countries. After Japan, the family would move to China, and then, if I'm not mistaken, to the US, and after the US it would be to Bangladesh, if I'm not mistaken, and they move around a lot. But the main concept that this book revolves around is this idea of hunger. It explores the protagonist's relationship with this concept of hunger, starting with how when she was a child she always had this physical hunger for certain food, for sweet food, and she would also have this hunger towards drinking, which she would describe as dipsomania. But that is not the only sort of place where hunger, not the only context where hunger is discussed, because as we will see later on, the hunger will also extend to a certain kind of hunger in which she would begin to find through words. And so in a way, this book sort of describes how this girl, as she moves from place to place, she's experiencing various kinds of hunger. A hunger for food and drinks, obviously, but there is also a deeper kind of hunger, the hunger for sort of like a certain kind of life. Now, what kind of life, I think you probably can guess. But let me just kind of leave it there. It's a kind of life that has something to do with meaning. Let's just put it like that. The kind of meaning that the writer ascribes to the protagonist. And since the book is sort of autobiographical, you can see where that is going. there's something about this book that does feel kind of pretentious to me, especially at the beginning when the author starts the story by describing how people from Vanuatu, because of the abundance of food and resource on their island, she claims that they have never really experienced hunger, and because of the fact that they never really experience hunger, they don't really like try to fight in their life in order to go to a position in which they can be satiated, because they don't have to do that. Now, that was the claim written by from the point of view of the protagonist, and I thought that was kind of because it's I thought the comparison is just a little bit wobbly to me, because you have someone who is more in tune with themselves, like the kind of hunger that they feel, and then they compare themselves with the hunger experience of a nation. And so I thought the comparison just didn't seem very solid to me. And so beginning this book, I thought it was just kind of, it didn't feel like particularly strong. But I do think that as we go further into the story, we can learn more about the protagonist, and we are also seeing the protagonist's experience moving around different countries, experiencing different kinds of hunger, mental and physical, and how that just sort of influences her personality, the way that she views her surroundings, her outlook. So I would say this is quite a fascinating read. It does feel kind of, only slightly undenlish as a semi-autobiographical novel, but because it is written by Amélie Nothomb, and I love her writing style, always using simple words, and there is a certain kind of humor that I thought just feel kind of unique, kind of individual. That dry humor that she would include in her book. So definitely recommend this one. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. Now I want to move on to the next one. This is a short book by Elizabeth Smart. This is By Grand Central Station, I Sat Down and Wept. This book was published in, let me see, it was published in 1945. I actually started reading this book. Well, not this particular reading session. I started trying out this book some time ago. I think more than a year ago. And I just could not get into this book for some reason. It just seemed really impenetrable to me at the time. But this time around, for this particular reading session of this book, I thought that it was very accessible. And that was just so weird, right? What is this book about? It revolves around a woman, a young woman who is in love with a married man. And this happened sometime in the 40s. And so the society was kind of different at that time. Like relationship with a married man, fornication has certain kind of consequences in in the US at least. This book takes place in the US. The author, Elizabeth Smart, is Canadian. And I just want to add that this book is also, like the previous book, an autobiographical novel. Now, not only this one is a novel, this is also I would say, a poetry prose novel. And so when you read the prose, there is a certain kind of rhythm that you could feel from the prose. And I love that. I really enjoyed that so much. As far as the plot of this novel goes, it's not something very I would say it's not something very tight. Like it's quite loose. Basically, it just describes how the protagonist is feeling as she's experiencing this intense love with this married man. And basically, the entire book is just her describing the extent of her emotions, how strong her love is, and she evokes imageries, references from the classics, imageries of comparison with war, like comparing her love towards this man with the war that was going on around at that time. And it was just, I would say, 80% declaration of her feeling and 20% account of events, which may make some people, which may put off some people reading this, because in a way you can also view it as some kind of a very a rambly writing of an extremely infatuated person, as if that person is writing in their diary and they're talking about how awesome the love is, how awesome the guy that they're in love is, how intense, how strong the love and the romance that they're having, how heartbreaking it is for them that the man is not able to be as much of a lover towards them as they hope, and it is that intense. So if you are interested in reading something that is super emotional, then maybe you can definitely try this book. If you're someone who goes for something that is very plot heavy, then this book might not be very very suitable for your taste. But still, I would recommend it, because I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Now, I don't really understand exactly why I couldn't get into this book when I tried it some time ago. I think it was also because I was not exactly at the right headspace at that time. Maybe I was tired at the time, and so I couldn't really get into the prose of this book. But sorry, but reading at this time, I feel like I could experience the fire of romance that this author ascribes to the protagonist. There is a certain air of tragedy, melancholy, among the raging fire of romance in this book. And much of the point of view that you get, I would say not much, but not all. I wouldn't say much, but all of the point of view that you get from this book is from the point of view of the protagonist, this woman who's in love with this man. You barely hear anything from this man himself. Like, much of the things that you hear about this man is through this woman. And so there is this very skewed view on who actually this man is. And you could certainly get the sense that this man has a particular character that is quite flawed, which kind of makes you feel like you want to shake this protagonist, because you feel like, you know, you're reading all of her emotions, and suddenly you feel like you're her best friend. And you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is not worth it. But reading all her declarations, it is also kind of irresistible. It is irresistible in the sense that you feel like some kind of voyeurism. You're looking into someone's diary, and you're reading about how this person is just feeling all of these things. Almost feels like you're watching some kind of train wreck happening, and you cannot get your eye out of it. Or at least that was how I felt. Because this protagonist is messy, but still, I enjoyed her messiness. I enjoyed the extent at which the emotions are portrayed. Really love it. So yeah, again, definitely recommend this book. Try it. It's a very short one, and I read it very quickly because I really did enjoy it. Now, the next book is also a 5-star read. This one is by Yoko Ogawa. It's called Hotel Iris. This book was published in 1990 in Japanese, I think. No, not 1990. It was published in 1996. I was 3 years old at the time. And the English translation version was published in 2010, and this was translated by Snyder. This is my second book by Yoko Ogawa. The first book that I read was the famous The Memory Police, and I thought that book was interesting. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but I think in hindsight, when compared to Hotel Iris, that book would probably be like, what, 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay, but kind of, safe. If you have read Hotel Iris, you'll probably know why I say that book is safe compared to this one, because this one is intense. This book is about a girl named Mari who lives in a Japanese seaside town, and her mom is a hotel proprietress, and this hotel is named Hotel Iris. So one day there is an incident happening at the hotel where a prostitute screams and leaves the room occupied by a man. And this incident caught the attention of the teenage Mari. And soon after that, the man also leaves the room, leaving some money for the room to the hotel. But this man left an impression on Mari. But it's not until a few days later in which Mari would eventually meet this man again by chance outside. And for some reason, Mari is drawn towards this man. Now, just another piece of background on the character of Mari. She lives with her mom And her mom is a very controlling person. Now, this is going to be very important for the rest of the book, I believe. Now, back to Mari's encounter with this man. So a few days later, he meets this man again by chance, and then they talk to one another and they become acquainted with one another. And they become friends. And she learns that this man is a translator. And I don't think that this man is named in this book. He remains referred to as the translator because he translates Russian to Japanese. and this man lives on an island off the coast of that seaside town. So whenever the man wants to go back home, he would have to take a ferry. And eventually the relationship between Mari and this man would grow from friendship to something much deeper and much more intense. Now, this man is a 60-something-year-old man. Mari is a 17-year-old girl. So you could sort of imagine what kind of mess Mari is going to get herself in, what kind of mess you could encounter in this book. So just a bit of heads up, this book contains very graphic sexual scenes. So if you're not comfortable with that kind of writing, you may want to pay attention to that. Okay. But yeah, this book is very graphic when it comes to portraying some sexual elements, ones that involve Mari and this translator. So yeah, basically that's the plot, and the story takes off from there. And you might be wondering, how does this book treats this relationship between this girl, the 17-year-old girl, and this 60-something-year-old man, right? This is something that is probably going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And I just gotta say that there's a good chance that the way this relationship is treated will indeed make a lot of people uncomfortable. And I think it's kind of evident from the average rating on Goodreads. I think this book only had like 3.3 average rating. Likely because of how this relationship is portrayed. But I just want to add that there's something quite fascinating about the relationship being shown in this book with relation to the concept of consent. I feel like the way consent is portrayed in this book is placed in an area where it is really gray. And to some people, this equals to consent not being given. But I think the fact that this is how it is written also makes this book really fascinating, because it kind of makes you question it makes you question what this book is trying to tell you about the character of Mari. Because reading this, as you learn more about Mari's upbringing, her personality, her family dynamics, everything that happens between her and her mom at the hotel, how she leads her day-to-day life, there is a certain kind of coming-of-age element in this book. And this coming-of-age plotline is written in this way that is sort of twisted with a bit of this, not with a bit, with a lot of this sexual element, her relationship with a much older man. And what does this imply about the life of Mari? I think it is really fascinating because to me it seems to suggest the idea of violence in a person's life and how violence can manifest themselves. And without giving too much details, honestly, I do want to give too much details because I do think that the interpretation, a personal interpretation and discussion of this book is very juicy. So if you have read this book, I would love to talk about it more with you. Full spoilers in the comments or somewhere else. But I just really love how this book connects sex, violence, and repression. Okay, so those three things, when connected to each other, feels like very normal. Like we see that kind of writing a lot, and I would say this one is kind of on a similar wavelength as that. But it does so in a particularly interesting way in which the scenery just feels sort of stilted, kind of inorganic, kind of uncanny as well. Like the place where Mari, the hotel and the seaside town and the island where the translator lives. There is something about this whole environment that just feels kind of awkward. Like, is as if there is in some kind of simulation, as if Mari's life is some kind of strange art house simulation. And on top of that, you add more of the sexual graphic scenes, much of them involving plenty of sadomasochism. And you get this book that is uncomfortable, but at the same time there is a certain feeling of renewal once you finish this book. And I really enjoyed the experience. I really enjoyed the reading experience and how I felt when I reached the end of this book. It just felt like there was some kind of cleansing happening, even though this book has tons of kinky bits. So I hope that that was enough to intrigue you guys if you have not read this book. I really enjoyed this. And while I was reading this book, I also noticed that when I went to a bookshop and I saw the Housekeeper and the Professor was on sale. That book is super popular. Like anytime I see that book online at a used bookstore, immediately someone would buy them. So I usually lose the opportunity to get the book. But that day I saw the book and I snatched it right away. Of course I paid it, but yeah, now I have another book by Yoko Ogawa as well. Really excited to try that one in the future. But this one, Hotel Iris, really awesome stuff. Definitely try it. And let me know also if you have read this book. Yeah, what do you think? Because I really do want to talk about more about this book. But I want to keep this space spoiler free. So anyway, I still have 3 more books to talk about, so that will come up in a future video. So until then, I see you again in the next one. So take care, thanks for watching, and bye.